Hello guys, today I want to talk about how I made my very first custom Super Mario Bros. Wonder search party level, which I ended up calling Zoom Zone. Now, since the original game's execution of the search party concept kinda sucks, you might assume that this project started because I wanted to challenge myself by seeing if it's possible to make a good version of this kind of level. But no, actually this thing turning into a search party level is something that happened naturally after I'd come up with its underlying structure. So that's what I want to talk about first. Because that's truly the most noteworthy thing about this level. It's 6 separate color-coded areas which are stacked on top of each other using Wonder's playable background and foreground area system. As usual, this is an idea that I've had bouncing around my head for quite a long time now, and it was actually inspired by a level with a similar structure in the game Monument Valley 2. But whereas executing this kind of idea was probably relatively easy in a game that was developed from the ground up, making it work using a pre-existing game's set of mechanics and limitations was really difficult. See, background areas in Wonder aren't separate level sections that have the same capacity as normal play areas. They're always a subset of another area with drawbacks that can't be overcome. Wonder effects, talking flowers, and loads of other important mechanics were never programmed to function in background areas. And whereas in other 2D platformers, the level's main route often progresses by zooming in on a background area and continuing like normal from there, in Wonder these sections are never treated this way. They're always secondary to the main area. Therefore, as you can probably imagine, making a Wonder level revolve around repeatedly zooming in on smaller and smaller background areas came with a large amount of challenges that I had to overcome. So before starting work on the level, I made a test version of the overall concept to see if it would actually function. Thankfully, even though this is never used for background areas in the original game, Wonder does have a pretty robust zoom system that allowed me to make the camera perfectly lock onto each background layer. Although, since camera scrolling in background areas works in a really strange way that I still don't fully understand, I decided to completely lock the camera to this one position throughout the entire level. Also, I should make it clear, when I say the camera zooms into a specific area, that's not an oversimplification. The game stays focused on this same starting screen the entire time, and the camera just gets smaller and smaller to show each area. This means that even in the deepest background layers, all the previous areas are technically still being processed, which is why parts of earlier layers can block the camera in later layers. This is exactly the kind of thing that wouldn't happen if the game had actually been designed with this kind of level in mind, but I actually ended up using this quirk for several setups in the final thing. So now that I knew the concept worked, I started thinking about what kind of level I could actually make using this layout. I was originally considering just doing a sequence of enemy encounters in each room like a KO arena, or maybe just a completely linear break time level. Then I realized I could spice things up a bit by making the player go back and forth between the layers to collect Wonder tokens, and before I knew it, I was working on a search party level. From the start, I wanted each layer to be made of color-coded pipes, since a lot of pipes were going to be involved either way to get you from area to area, and this gave each layer a uniform yet distinct aesthetic. However, originally my plan was to go kinda crazy with the pipes by placing them across the entire screen in each layer, forming these overwhelmingly colorful backgrounds. This would have maybe made a bit more sense once I implemented the additional sections to the side of some of the areas later down the line, but either way this just didn't look right. So I ended up removing all of this pipe spam and rethinking the level's visuals. Though I have to say, I am surprised that the game could cope with rendering hundreds of pipes on screen at the same time like this to begin with. Anyways, I tried using the search party style background tiles, but those apparently don't always render properly in background layers. So I ended up making custom background wall objects from scratch that still sort of matched the search party style. Apart from the technical implementation of the central setup, by far the biggest problem with making this level was the design challenge that this same central setup presented. Because, like I explained earlier, the camera just zooms in on the same screen over and over again. Meaning if I want the effect to be seamless, there can't be anything blocking this part of the screen by the time the player moves on to the next layer. This meant I had to design each section to either not use the central third of the screen at all, or to have whatever does cover this part of the screen serve a purpose in the subsequent layer. This challenge actually ended up inspiring the first room of the level, where the player has to destroy boxes to uncover the upcoming sections, which also makes for a nice little reveal of just how deep the level goes. Now, one way I could have made this screen real estate issue less impactful was by making each layer take up a smaller part of the background of the previous area. However, not only would this make the entire visual gimmick of the level less significant, but I was also already pushing the limit of just how small certain objects in Wonder can get before things become really glitchy. In the final level, there are already problems with certain particle effects not scaling properly and that sort of stuff, and this would have become exponentially more noticeable if I'd made each room relatively smaller. Another design challenge, of course, was hiding the Wonder tokens. In the original game's search party levels, these are often extremely frustrating to find due to their cryptic hiding spots. And although I did sort of want to honor this design choice at least a bit, I also wanted to make sure that this level likely wouldn't lead to that same type of frustration. So I ended up having most tokens revolve around obvious but difficult challenges, as opposed to dumb invisible block puzzles or whatever, but I'd say at least 2 tokens are still pretty hard to find. Another thing I wanted to ensure with this level is that, like other search party levels, it wouldn't be completely linear. So from the start, I didn't want the player to just be able to clear each room one at a time and then finish the level in the deepest layer. Therefore, I needed some way to have the player unlock more tokens by going to the yellow room, which would then force them to backtrack through the other rooms to complete the level. My original plan was for the player to receive a key that allows you to unlock a door, which then leads to another key and another door, etc. However, as I only learned after already implementing most of this route into the level, keys are one of those objects that don't work with background areas. Because if the player moves to a different layer using a pipe, the key gets left behind and actually still follows the player's movements in the other layer as if the player never left. It's really strange. So this meant I had to completely rework my plans for the level because the key door thing clearly wasn't gonna work. I was always going to have some of those yellow switch blocks in the level as well, which would be another way for the player to unlock more sections after reaching the deepest layer. So I ended up deciding to make this replace the key door system entirely by adding several pipes to the level that are blocked by yellow blocks. And those aren't the only switch blocks I added to the level, because basically the main section of the entire thing revolves around a mini-game the player interacts with using on-off blocks. The goal is to defeat some Goombrats using a spike ball by guiding it using some on-off platforms, which isn't the most creative section ever, but I just knew I had to add something like this to the level or else the whole thing would be pretty boring. And I do really like how I managed to basically use the section twice over by allowing the player to use the spike ball to unlock a second Wonder token after the yellow blocks have been activated. That entire setup is something I basically came up with on the fly, but the final thing I added to the level was something I'd planned from the start. See, the original game's search party levels feature this appropriate question mark motif, which is something that I couldn't easily implement into my level because of its very different aesthetic. But since the background of each section is actually a playable area, I realized I could add decorations like a question mark by just building it out of level terrain such as pipes. And then I realized I could make this kind of structure be something the player has to actually navigate through, and suddenly I'd come up with a really fun way to finish off the level. Though actually the true final joke of the level is that the Wonder Seed spawns in the foreground of the main area, meaning the player can't collect it until zooming out past the starting zone, which makes for a funny final reveal, I hope. So anyways, let me now talk you through the level in-game. Okay, and here we are. So we have the normal search party menu intro here. And what you'll see here is that actually you can't really completely see just how deep the level goes right at the start here, because of these wooden crates blocking your view. But what you can see is there's a question mark block over here off on the left of the pipe structure, and there's also another pipe structure over here which is in the form of the giant question mark, which I just talked about, and that contains the final wonder token, even though it's also the first wonder token you see, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, if we head in here, you can see the talking flower reacts to that. And that's actually the only talking flower in the level because, well, like I also talked about in the video earlier, talking flowers don't work in background areas, so I couldn't put one of those in like any of these rooms, and that's fine really. And yeah, here the idea is that you're either supposed to just ground pound or use the power blocks to get rid of all of these crates to sort of like reveal the later sections, and you can also throw a power block over here to get this wonder token. And also you may notice that we came in from this pipe up here, and this is actually a pipe you can't enter back through, and I just placed it up here to sort of signify that you're not really supposed to go back through that. And that actually means that we're currently sort of locked into this part of the level, and so we'll have to like wrap all the way back around and then unlock these yellow blocks to be able to escape, basically. But that's something we'll get back to later. This red pushable block thing here is actually something I added really last minute, but I actually really like it because it sort of continues the visual motif of like revealing parts of the level as you progress through the different layers. And so now we have a good view of this crazy on-off block puzzle. And this on-off block that I'm using here also spawned after I pushed this block over to the right. And originally I wanted to do that with one of those like glowing areas, which the original game uses once or twice with these pushable blocks as well. But I actually couldn't get that to work right with a vertical like wall that I wanted it to be pushed into. That doesn't really, that just doesn't work for that particular actor. So I ended up just having that happen without any kind of visual indication, but I don't really think that's a big deal. And yeah, now we just got the second wonder token. And I do really like feel like it is kind of a bit lame that these last two rooms here, they're super duper empty. I was originally considering doing some kind of puzzle with like a pulley maybe or something like that, but I couldn't get that to really work properly, so I ended up just having, yeah, just basically entirely empty rooms. But what we do have here is, there's actually a 1-up up here. Which it's funny how that 1-up, this block here, like blends in perfectly with the background. That's like totally unintentional, but it does actually look kind of interesting. But what really is the main attraction here, which isn't really that significant, but it's, you know, it does matter, is this double rotating block setup here, which reveals the third wonder token in the background there. And I actually do really like the way this particular puzzle turned out, and also we hit the yellow block switch here. But yeah, if we go over here, these aren't like giant rotating blocks in front of us. These are like the blocks in the foreground we just hit. And those are actually hiding some smaller rotating yellow blocks. And yeah, we use those to get the third wonder token. And yeah, like this is what I mean. Like if there was more going on in this room, I feel like now like this backtracking wouldn't be so boring. So that's something I don't really love about this level, but whatever. And yeah, hitting the yellow blocks means we can now do this secondary puzzle with this same rolling spike ball. So if I hit this like this, there we go. That's going to destroy those blocks. And I actually intentionally made it to where getting up to this pipe takes a couple of seconds. So that way, by the time you reach this section, the spike ball would have already moved on. And what's also really cool, and what you may have guessed, is that if I continue moving over to the left here, and walk around in this section, which you can totally do, there's actually a bunch of like little Easter eggs here. Well, basically there's just 3 hidden question mark blocks with more and more coins and whatnot in them. So yeah, this is thrilling gameplay right now. There we go. And yeah, that's just a little Easter egg because I couldn't really prevent players from going over here, so I had to add something like that, and I think that's fine. And oh yeah, the way those arrows, you see the, pay attention to the arrow that's going to point at the red pipe here. Yeah, the way that's not like rotated to match the pipe, I think that's just a glitch that the original developers never fixed because there aren't any horizontal pipe entrances going in or out of background areas in the original game. So that's just something I have to cope with, and I'm not going to design my level around not showing that because like the level is already complicated enough as it is. I also don't want to have that as another limiting factor. But anyways, now we have the cool final question mark block thing, and well, not a question mark block, just a question mark. And yeah, here's the Wonder Seed and the funny little twist I talked about at the end of the time lapse, with how you can't grab this Wonder Seed until you go into this pipe. And yeah, you'd expect this to be the end of the video, but there's actually some more stuff I want to show that's kind of interesting about this level, so yeah, let me show you that right now. Okay, so what you may have been wondering is what happens if you don't break the wooden boxes here. And this is something that I decided to just not really account for, because I imagine most people will. But the funny thing is you can obviously just continue playing through the level, and yeah, now this is what things look like. And obviously the idea is that this being the way you play through this level now is like something that like discourages the player from doing this, and it's quite easy to go back over to the left and like potentially backtrack and then destroy the boxes that way. Oh, wait, okay, there we go. I mean, I can't see what I'm doing, so this is a bit difficult. Speaking of which, I also can't, like, I don't think doing the spike ball puzzle is really feasible in this way, because I don't have the timing memorized, and I can't see half of the area over here. So, yeah, this is a bit awkward, but what we can do is we can just keep going further and further down, and then eventually, here we are, we can go all the way into the yellow room. You can see that the quality of the boxes is becoming very apparent. And what just happened there is that the yellow switch got activated, and that meant that some of the boxes fell down. So now we have a bit more visibility, I suppose, which is kind of a happy accident. And I don't know if that's going to allow us to actually... it's kind of funny how this lines up. I totally didn't intend this to be how this works. And yeah, now you can see like things are slightly less awkward, though I still can't really see what's going on over to the left here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear away these boxes and then show you another funny thing you can do, because there's an actually even like stranger thing you can do along these lines that yeah, you'll see. Okay, so what is about to happen is I'm gonna get the final Wonder Token, which is actually the second Wonder Token, because I did things out of order, and that's gonna spawn the Wonder Seed, and you'll see that doing this, yeah, has this effect. Because obviously still, like, at this point even, the final green room is still being rendered, and so therefore also this Wonder Seed is still being rendered. So we can actually go a level deeper if we want as well. And normally, like, this is the cleared version of the Wonder Seed, because I already got it earlier. But if you were playing this level for the first time and did things out of order, you wouldn't be able to see anything at this point. It would just be all Wonder Seeds, which would be kind of funny looking. And yeah, this is something like, I could have technically like only made the Wonder Seed spawn if you were like in one of the final rooms, and then this wouldn't have looked like this. But I decided to just like not do that, because this is kind of funny, and I can't imagine most people will end up doing this in their first playthrough, and so at that point, like, why should I care? And yeah, we can now just progress through the level like normally, and there we go. Now we can, yeah, but I guess now the video is done. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like or subscribing or whatever. I also have a Discord server linked in the description, and if you want to watch my videos early, you can sign up for a YouTube channel membership. But anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and bye bye!